And now, at least over here, we've been working with these questions a while, and it starts to feel like these are also my questions from this collective.
Oh, interesting. All right.
So it's a two-part question. I'm just going to put it on the table upstairs. The first part is, where did the contamination come from?
And when you say the contamination, what do you mean by that?
Well, if you think what this means is what makes the black hole of corruption the black hole of corruption.
Well, that when the stardust coagulated in this area to form this planet and possibly surrounding planets as well.
It feels like others too.
That there was a contaminant in the stardust, that it's in every single one of us. Some spiritual traditions refer to it as original sin, and
That's right.
it's a contamination, and that we all share it, and every molecule shares it, every atom, every subatomic particle, the quarks all have it, the photons have it. It's in every one of us. So where did the original contamination come from that contaminated the stardust? Where did it come from?
Where did it come from?
Just kind of seems to have been like a belch, or like literally a fart from some very large presence.
That's what it feels like.
It was a release that was maybe impolite, but not necessarily terrible.
You know what this feels like? This feels like when there are people in leadership positions who give people excuses to be the worst possible versions of themselves. And that I'm going to say fart because that's what it feels like, itself was not a bad thing, but lots of little pieces of stardust around it decided to grab a hold of that feeling and then make a series of bad choices as if that feeling gave them permission to do that. I don't know if I'm saying this well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's where it came from was that thing that released from a really, really, really big presence.
And then others making bad choices about that.
Is what made it into a contamination and not just a natural event.
Well, then maybe the contamination was there before that.
That's what someone's saying.
What was occurring. Maybe that's what happened in this part of the multiverse.
Right? If you track back before that, what does it feel like?
People resenting the instruction to become better people.
Interesting, right?
Maybe.
Doesn't it kind of feel like that?
Yes, I don't want to do it. And kind of begrudgingly not becoming worse publicly because of the public instruction to become better.
Where did the contamination come from?
Probably we're still looking inside the zone of contamination.
Right. Our frame of reference
is too tight.
Yeah.
And we're not aware of any other spiritual seekers who have a frame of reference anywhere remotely near this large.
Not that we know of.
No, they're all looking way, way tighter. Like many spiritual traditions, all they're focused on is be nice to other humans. It's such a tight definition.
Here's my best guess, is that we put the second part of the question on the table and see if it shakes loose something.
Okay.
The second part of the question is, can it, referring to the contamination, be returned to its source?
Can the contamination be returned to its source?
That goes up.
contamination is the bad choice making. Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching?
That's what they're talking about.
And to choose your attitude well. Our attitudes are the only things that we have any control over at all. Life hands us whatever it hands us, and then it's up to us to find the meaning in it and find the gifts in it, and to make the best of the situation and have the courage to change the things we can, and the serenity to change the things we cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And our Ra used to say, sometimes only in hindsight can you tell. When we would ask him, how can you tell which situations we can change and which we cannot? He said, sometimes only in hindsight. And when we go to wiser minds above, higher powers, and present a problem of which we have awareness, the first thing that they say is, well, what have you tried?
That's it.
That's always what they say.
That's
what
true.
have you tried?
Well, I'm going to have to babble this out, and I might have to back up and correct myself. But if I were in a healing session with a client right now, and the client asked, what can I do to return the contamination to the source? Probably what their guardian angels would say is something along the lines of, every time you make a selfless, courageous choice on behalf of the greater good, and usually how you know it's selfless is that you don't really want to do that thing.
Right.
That sounds inconvenient and like
bad idea.
and like way not what you wanted to do. Probably in that very small way, you can take in from your own stardust a little bit of that bad thing and convert it. Because we can't really change what other people do. It doesn't work like that. But probably tiny bit by tiny bit by tiny bit in your own stardust, a little every time.
How Asha used to word it is, turn around and help someone.
That's what they're talking about. They're talking about Asha.
And she taught very well, in our personal opinion, and she taught repeatedly, turn around and help someone more vulnerable. Help.
That's what they're talking about.
Yes, and when we are not helping the vulnerable, when the vulnerable are being bullied, then we are siding with the bullies. And then that makes us complicit in the bullying. And the only way to not be complicit in the bullying is to attempt to stop the vulnerable presences from being bullied.
And it's interesting because they're talking about the definition of a good person, and they're talking about how a lot of times when people hear stand up for the vulnerable, stand up for the bullied, we really only think about people who look like us, our species, and sometimes even just our culture. But you know who's really being bullied right now on our planet the worst? I don't think it's humans.
No, it's not. The Anthropocene extinction is pointing to it's the other species, and it's many, many other species. It's the insects, it's the sea life, it's birds, amphibians, reptiles, mammals. It's all of it, except humans. And even within humans, there's an awful lot of bullying going on.
That's what they're talking
There's now
about.
7.9 billion humans. We round up to 8 billion. For some reason this morning, the New York Times rounded down to 7 billion, which they fail math right there. That is not how one rounds.
Right, I hear you.
What is the media's responsibility?
That's what they're talking about.
That is what they're saying. What is the media's responsibility? When all these truly horrendous things are happening, it should be front page headlines every single day until the problem is addressed. It should be a relentless barrage of reality to tell the truth about what's happening. And if the media is not telling the truth, as has been the case for a good 20 years, and
That's what they said,
maybe
20.
50 years. I don't know.
I hear
but
you,
at least
right.
20 years. Back in the 70s, they were
They're
talking
talking about the
it.
Vietnam War, and they're saying that after the Vietnam War, there was this big shift in the media where they decided it did not work to tell people about the atrocities that were happening, because then people got very upset.
Grumpy.
And they made it so much harder to do those
Right,
things.
because then the soldiers coming back were being referred to as baby killers instead of as heroes. And based on our personal experiences with the people who have come back from the Iraq conflict and the Afghanistan conflict, as well as many other conflicts,
Mhm.
it hasn't changed. They're still doing horrible things, and they're now being lauded as heroes, and that messes up their psyche. Like, that's not good for them.
And then it gets very confusing in the head about what
Mhm.
is it to be a good person, because I did things
Mhm.
that...
We're horrible, and they're calling me a hero.
Yeah, and so now I don't know how to act now.
Hmm. And there are some people who just like to break things.
That's
And,
true, I hear you.
Yeah, they just want to break things, and they want any excuse to break things. And what's with hunting? Like, that's
what someone just said up there.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. What's with hunting? That there's no call for that. Go to the grocery store. Buy what you need. Don't go shooting things that belong far more than we do. That's just wanting to break things. That's wanting to hurt, wanting to be nasty. It's devolved behavior. Somebody's saying.
Yeah, right, I hear you.
And when we say somebody, what the channel's job is in this particular assignment, the channel's job is to continually sift through the torrent of astral input to find always the highest vibration. And sometimes if you guys have been observing these videos, you'll see times where the highest vibration has a microphone that is not turned on.
Yeah.
And we can tell that that's the person we should be listening to, but we are unable to tell what they're saying because their microphone is turned off. And it's crucial to not point our focus at anybody else, because that is still the person with the highest vibration.
Yeah.
So we continue to ignore all the other yappity from the astrals and focus on the person who has the highest vibration, even if it just simply means we sit here and say, it's very quiet. Their lips are moving. Do not hear.
That's it.
Sister Faustina says, I, Sister Faustina, by the order of God, have visited the abysses of hell so that I might tell souls about it and testify to its existence. Abysses, plural.
Yeah, right?
I think I didn't notice that until just now.
Me neither.
And that it's not a one-size-fits-all equation.
That's right.
And that law of attraction is real, and law of attraction is going to draw all of us. When we shuffle off this mortal coil, law of attraction will draw us directly to a matching vibration for what we've been dishing out. And some people dish out cowardice.
That's true.
And some people dish out laziness.
Some people dish out lies.
Some people dish out cheating,
Arrogance.
stealing,
Anger.
bullying, violence. It's interesting because many times children are bullied, and the choice that the child makes more frequently than not is to just bide their time until they are the larger one, and then they bully the smaller ones around them.
That's it.
And that's not an evolved choice, but it is a very common choice. And there are others who were badly bullied while they were children, and they choose to not be that way.
And You know what that might feel like? The choice to not be that way.
What?
It might feel like one of those little feelings of returning the contamination to the source, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
Well, I would have to experiment with that, so
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know.
I don't see how to return the contamination to the source, to be honest. I would just, during this inquiry right now, attempting to find how to return it to its source. The source is in the ambiance.
That's
it's
it.
everywhere.
That's what we're talking about. Environment,
Yeah.
ambiance.
All the molecules, all the atoms, all the subatomic particles, all the photons and quarks, and they move around.
Yeah, they do.
So it's everywhere. Once it gets into the photons and quarks, you're sunk.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
And that's where we find ourselves. For him is a message, and why do you ask? And now what? Now what? To create, well, now what? To inspire a divine miracle, to create worlds that work in all dimensions and for all categories of sentience, because surely we can all agree it's going to take a divine miracle to pull this disaster out of the ditch. I, Sister Faustina, by the order of God, have visited the abysses of hell, so that I might tell souls about it and testify to its existence. She's called Saint Faustina.